Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's the publisher of thebreaker.news. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, a great big money laundering case has fallen apart. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is the one in Richmond, the Silver International, and it was the company and various other people that were connected to this, people who had also connections to casino gambling and money laundering and real estate deals, people that owned multiple houses and luxury houses in Lower Mainland. Well, they were supposed to go to court in January for what's supposed to be a sensational trial about essentially how the Vancouver model works. The Vancouver model is what an Australian criminology professor coined for what goes on here in Vancouver, the Vancouver style of modern transnational crime, where you have people from China bringing large sums of money to buy real estate, to gamble in casinos, to launder that money, to be involved in the import and export of drugs and elements of drugs, and alliances with others in the criminal underworld, especially those in Central and South American gangs, a whole Pacific Rim network. Well, the RCMP had been in a multi-year investigation, had made busts at what is essentially a money laundering service out in Richmond, shut it down, and it did bring several people into the court realm, charge them, but for reasons that are not yet spelled out by the prosecution service, federal prosecutors, and by the RCMP, which was leading this investigation, the case collapsed. They said it no longer met the standards by which they bring cases to court, and that's a pretty simple standard, that they need a substantial likelihood of conviction and that it is in the public interest. So you have to think that in this day and age, when one of the dominant issues here in Vancouver is corruption and crime at casinos, as well as the inflation of the real estate market, which has garnered worldwide headlines, the public interest box had been ticked with a very thick marker. So something happened on the other side of the equation, a substantial likelihood of conviction. Somehow they lost hope that they would get those convictions. And the question is, was this a botched investigation? Was there bad evidence? Was there bad policing and detective work? What went on that side of the equation? That's where we have to focus our questions on, because, again, public interest is pretty much a slam dunk that this is an issue that needed to be tried, put in front of a judge, and these people needed to answer to the allegations, but they won't, for reasons on the other side of the equation, which is what went on with the case that had been put together by RCMP. It evidently was not airtight, and what was the reason that was found not to be airtight?
Isn't there another major money laundering case coming up?
There is. It's still coming down the pike. Back in June of 2017, you might remember during that strange period in BC history when the election ended essentially in a deadlock. The Liberals had a few more votes than the NDP, but the NDP eventually had more seats, but not enough to form a majority. Didn't know what was going to go on, whether the Greens were going to fully agree to supporting the NDP. Well, what went on was a news conference that involved people from the organized crime unit of the RCMP and the Joint Illegal Gambling Intelligence Team They had come together on an investigation that had found some international money laundering, had found ties to casinos, to illegal gambling. They came and did a news conference during that period of time when we didn't know if we'd have a BC Liberal government going forward or a BC NDP government. Well, they came forward and said that there had been multiple arrests in this very complex case. There had not been charges yet, and there still have not been charges announced. Now, I did a story on it back in the summer when the people at the Organized Crime Policing Agency basically said that it's finished. The investigation's finished. Now they were putting forward their disclosure documents, their reports to Crown Counsel for Crown Counsel to ponder the evidence and decide on the charges, if any. So we're waiting on that case. But the future of that case may be affected directly or indirectly on the case of what was called E-Pirate, the case that collapsed in front of the courts this week.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, the Squamish Nation has scored a $1 billion deal. What is that deal?
Well, it's the deal that has convinced the Squamish Nation chiefs and council to vote 8-6 in favor of Woodfibre LNG, the $1.6 billion LNG plant on the site of the former pulp mill near Squamish and Howe Sound. Now, this is not without controversy at all because people in Squamish have not exactly been very enthusiastic about this, even though there are some that are looking at this for employment and for supplying to the company as it builds. But there have been deliberations for several years between Woodfibre LNG and the Squamish Nation because it essentially needed local First Nation approval to go forward. And the local First Nation, Squamish Nation, did its own environmental assessment report. That hasn't been published, but that report did have 25 conditions for the company to follow, and one of those conditions at the end of the day, after they satisfied everything else, was for an economic benefits agreement for money to be paid to the Squamish Nation to make this happen. And the Squamish Nation was able to reach a deal with Woodfibre LNG, with FortisBC, which is the pipeline company to supply the gas to the plant, as well as the provincial government, on a deal that's worth well over $1.1 billion. Now, about $225 million of that is cash to be paid out over 40 years, about $4.7 million a year to be paid annually, plus some milestone payments, when certain agreements are signed, as well as when there's completion milestones as well. So $225 million of cash, then about $870 million of other aspects and contracts available to qualified Squamish Nation businesses. Now, that could be for companies within the Squamish Nation to do work on the project and other aspects of the project. And then $16 million for employment opportunities, training, education upgrades. There's going to be about 1,600 construction jobs during the construction phase, and 330 during operations. So about 2,000 jobs they're looking at. Squamish Nation members would be front of the line, and if their skills and qualifications aren't quite up to snuff, then they'll have a chance to top those up through education and training. And then the $3 million for cultural and environmental legacies. Now that's the cash and the in-kind part of it. There's also an element of 422 hectares of land transferred from 9 parcels of land in the Squamish Valley. That's believed to be provincial government land that's being given back to the Squamish Nation. The Squamish Nation does have a sizable land claim in this region, so that's what that would be about. We don't know how much this is going to cost taxpayers because the provincial government hasn't said so yet, and neither has Woodfibre LNG or Fortis BC yet. Neither of them have responded to me. There was a meeting November 21st where the Squamish Nation Chiefs and Council voted 8-6 in favor of the agreement. And there was another meeting last night on November 27th in which there was a presentation by Woodfibre LNG about the economic benefits agreement to certain people involved in the Squamish Nation. And that's how I learned about it. There's also the possibility of the Squamish Nation being able to buy 5% equity in the project. So it has a chance to actually be a 5% shareholder in the project. As well, there could be some natural gas service to people in the Squamish Valley, and also to areas in the Valley Cliff neighborhood of Squamish, that the Squamish Nation does have some private land holdings there. So there is that aspect to it. There's a very large precedent-setting deal, very controversial deal, because as much as there are those in the Squamish Nation that are looking at this for economic development for First Nation, there are also those people who are concerned about the environment of Howe Sound. There's also a grassroots group called My Sea to Sky, which has been very vocal for a number of years, that's been opposing this, because since the site where they want to build this LNG plant, which used to be a pulp mill, since that pulp mill closed a number of years ago, the environment of Howe Sound actually improved, from fish habitats to whales. There's been and other sea mammals, dolphins, and even baleen whales have been seen in Howe Sound. Signs of an environment that has improved over the years, and they're worried that this is going to be detrimental to the marine environment, detrimental to the air quality in Howe Sound by having such a plant there. A plant like this will be very, very energy intensive. There will be also the tankers. There will be, again, pollution up there that there isn't right now. So they're worried about that and have been protesting against it. But despite that, scientists working for the provincial government and federal government both said that it'll be within acceptable levels, and there are measures to mitigate and prevent any damage. Some people up there in Howe Sound aren't yet convinced of that. But of course, even with this economic benefits agreement, more doors are opened, but it doesn't guarantee this will be built. There was a conference call with stock analysts by the CEO of Fortis Incorporated at the start of November, and he told them that there isn't a final investment decision yet on this project. They're getting close, and he was quite optimistic, but there isn't a final investment decision yet, which is interesting because 2 years ago, the BC Liberals, when they started their convention, their last pre-election convention, they said there was. And they had photo ops on site up there at Woodfibre LNG, and were saying this was a done deal. Well, it wasn't really a done deal at the time. There still were more hoops to jump through. And this has been a deal that has been through a lot of secrecy. Again, the Squamish Nation environmental assessment, that was not published. That report was not published. There was also some sort of deal made between Rich Coleman when he was the natural gas minister back in the fall of 2016 with a fellow named Sukanto Tanoto, the Indonesian billionaire who ultimately owns the company that was building Woodfibre LNG. I tried to get a copy of that document, a document that actually there's a photo of Rich Coleman and Sukanto Tanoto posing for a photo op in front of the camera. I was able to get that photo from the government through RFOI, and you can see it on my story on the Breaker.news, but the BC Liberal government and later the NDP, when it became government, both succeeded in blocking that agreement from me. So I don't know, and we don't know, what kind of benefits Rich Coleman gave to Sukanto Tanoto, the owner of Woodfibre LNG, on behalf of the government. It'd be nice to know that. Nice to know everything there is to know about this deal. Again, I was able to get a copy of a summary of the economic benefits, but the devil will be in the details to see how this actually does accrue to the members of the Squamish Nation. it certainly is something that we understand is supported by the NDP. John Horgan, when he was in opposition, expressed his support for this project, and this would tick some boxes for him because, of course, he's been very much a proponent of economic development for First Nations, but at the same time he's under pressure by the Green Party because Andrew Weaver has been very vociferous that developing the LNG industry will actually set BC backwards when it comes to fulfilling the climate change obligations that it has made to other governments.
Yes, isn't that LNG going to countries or would China, Japan that rely on coal right now? Isn't that better for the planet?
Well, that's the interesting part. It's an interesting argument one way or another that, again, the BC Liberals love to use the word clean when they put the word clean in front of LNG or clean in front of Site C. Well, anyone who knows anything about energy knows that there is no clean energy. When you're creating energy, when you're extracting energy, when you're storing energy, when you're using energy, somewhere along the way, somewhere along the chain, there's something dirty that happens with energy. Having said that, the fracking process, of course, it has some of its drawbacks, and the process of cooling the LNG, cooling the natural gas to the state where it can be called LNG is very expensive and very energy intensive. That's not exactly a clean process. But again, if the exporting it, putting it in ships, that's not terribly clean itself, but it's the end part of it which does bring you the ability to call it less dirty, because it is less dirty than coal, and countries like China are seriously looking at LNG as salvation for them to have brighter skies, bluer skies, that they are shutting down coal plants and replacing them with natural gas. That's where they want to go. And BC is in a fortunate spot where the natural gas reserves are quite substantial up north. BC also is challenged because it is a province with a lot of people that care for the environment who are not happy with the idea of fracking happening because it is not entirely clean process. But at the end of the day, it is a very lucrative industry if the forecasts come true that in years to come the demand will increase to the point where the prices will be high enough to justify it. Right now the prices aren't high enough to justify it, but there are several companies that are making bets on this. Bets that right now are reliant on major government subsidies. The BC NDP was very critical of the Liberals when they were in power about what the subsidies were being offered to Petronas for its major plant. Well, Petronas walked away from building its plant because of economic reasons. The NDP got into power, and when the consortium that wanted to build the big LNG plant in Kitimat came knocking, they essentially gave them the same kind of deal of major tax write-offs and subsidies to make this happen. Some very large corporations that could probably dig in their pockets and pay for it themselves, but they benefited from tax subsidies and breaks. Yeah, the argument is that this industry will be big enough to have large enough tax spin-offs that tax revenue will eventually come back to the coffers of the province. It's something definitely to watch because of the debate over of this kind of fuel, as well as the debate over the economics of it. But you'd have to think that BC, in many ways, with natural gas, is in a better position than Alberta is with oil.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE, symbol CRL, and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Bob Mackin. Bob, what have you been digging into and finding out about the suspension of the BC Legislature Sergeant at Arms and its legislative clerk?
Well, it's still quite a mystery because, of course, the prosecution service and RCMP aren't saying anything. The best I can get from my sources is that there was some sort of allegation of corruption that concerned the Speaker's office enough that the RCMP took it seriously, and concerned enough that the nonpartisan bureaucrats, senior bureaucrats in the Attorney General's ministry took it seriously enough that they contacted the prosecution service, which appointed not one but two special prosecutors. It's that serious. Normally, one special prosecutor can handle the whole file, but in this case, they say it's complicated, and the size and the scope are such that there needs to be two special prosecutors. So there definitely is something there. There's been a lot of political to and fro since this blew up on November 20th when Craig James, the clerk, and Gary Lenz, the sergeant at arms, were marched out of the legislature. What this would have done is given an opportunity to those who are investigating this to take full control of their files, of their phones, of their email accounts, of the computer servers, without having to go to court to get a search warrant. But at the same time, no one's been charged, and we have no clarity on why this has happened, except to say that they're doing their best to investigate it. This is a case that has caused Craig James and Gary Lenz to go out and hire lawyers from Fasken, which is a very large law firm in Vancouver, a firm that has ties to the BC Liberal Party from the past. One of their lawyers actually is someone who's a commercial litigator who was the lead lawyer on all the BC Hydro defenses against court challenges that were trying to derail the Site C project. And they've also hired a crisis public relations company called Peak Communicators. Former BCTV reporter Alan Edwards is one of the senior people at Peak Communicators. So they're getting advice from top lawyers, top white-collar lawyers in Vancouver, and getting advice from a top BC-owned public relations crisis agency to try to get ahead of the story, because this has been a story which has caused some controversy in Victoria, where the Liberals who voted along with the Greens and the NDP to do the suspension on November 20th started to have some second thoughts, and were starting to ask questions after the fact, which I think they were really intending to try to topple or to destabilize at least the office of the Speaker of Darryl Plecas, because there's no love lost. Darryl Plecas was a BC Liberal, and after the election, after the NDP formed government, there was a caucus retreat in Penticton where he stood up and challenged Christy Clark and her ability to have confidence as leader of the party. He was going to withdraw his support, sit as an independent, if she was going to continue on as the leader of the party after being blamed for losing the election and losing power to the NDP. And it took a day or so, but she finally resigned. Darryl Plecas later that summer left the BC Liberal caucus and took up the offer to become the Speaker of the House after being elected twice in Abbotsford South for the BC Liberals. He turned his back on the party. He viewed this as a bit of a higher calling, and it also helped the NDP, which got an extra cushion because of the very close margin. This meant that they didn't have to force the Speaker to vote to break any ties. So that the BC Liberals are very, very unhappy with Darryl Plecas, and they're looking for any excuse to try to knock him off his game and knock the NDP off the game and try to return to power someday. That may be easier said than done, especially when you've got such a serious investigation as this. Again, Craig James and Gary Lenz have emphatically denied any wrongdoing, say they're innocent, they've demanded their jobs back. But at the same time, how can they be allowed to have their jobs back when there's such a cloud over the legislature, when you've got police and two special prosecutors that were appointed in this? We'll have to see where this goes and what's happening with the legislature, especially when this integrity is questioned.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's the publisher of thebreaker.news. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.